Like if we're in a situation like on some of Gordon's cars or Mark's bikes, if you're trying to sell it and it's sitting around for a few months,
Yeah.
always put some of this in it. Right, if you've had your bike laid up for a year, 2 years, whatever, if you're lucky, you run it out of petrol or the carb's dry, because that's going to be, not so much on Harleys because they don't have what you call an idle jet, they just have a big, it's like turning a tap on the carburetor basically. But fuel system is one side of it, so you've got a tank drain there. If you want to drain your fuel out, put fresh fuel in. Hopefully your car will be okay. Check your battery charge. Obviously if you need to charge the battery or put a new battery in it, so make sure you've got your 6 volts here. Just notice that's loose. So that's your carb and your battery. Now the oiling system on a Harley, unless it's a brand new oil pump, it will wet, so what they call wet sumping. So your oil from your tank drains down through the pump and fills up your sump. So you've got a bolt here, so that's your crankcase drain. So put a clean tray or pan underneath it, undo that and drain all of your oil out of the engine casing. Yeah. Being clean, you can then top it back up into your oil tank, and that should give you enough head of oil on the pump, so you haven't got to worry about the pump. Yeah.
Okay.
You can take the plugs out, turn the ignition on, and you get your oil light. If you want to, just kick it over with no plugs in until your oil light goes out, which shouldn't take very long at all.
Okay.
So then you know you've got oil around the engine. Plugs back in, you might as well clean the plugs while they're out, and then give it a go really. But as long as you drain that oil back out of there, because some of these, they'll backfill so much that you've got oil pissing out here. So what it is, there's no seal on the end of the crankshaft. So if the crankcase fills up with oil past the level of the crank pin, it will just come out the crank pin.
Okay.
Fill up your casing. So basically drain your oil out of there, put it back in there, then you know you've got a head of oil, take the plugs out, kick it over till your oil light goes out, then you know you've got oil around the engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we should be ready to go realistically. Biggest problems on these will be the battery's flat and just that oiling system. Generally the carburetors don't go wrong because there isn't a pilot jet in them or anything. All you've got, your float hangs on the bowl that bolts on there. That's a military style, so you've got a fixed jet in it there, and there isn't any primary system on it at all. No idle valve, no idle. There is, the idle hole is, it just sucks in through the Venturi, doesn't it? Yeah, it sucks in through the Venturi. That's your idle adjustment, but that's just mixture. It's not stopping fuel going in and out. So generally the carburetors will go. So again, it's make sure you drain the crank, because if you can start them with the oil in them, but it'll smoke like hell, and you've got a chance of blowing the bottom of the engine out, because if there's so much oil in it, it's called what you call hydraulicing. It'll just, obviously as a piston goes up, you've got compression.
Yeah.
As it comes down, you've got a breather system, which is timed. The outlet's here. There's a little that goes straight up into there, and it's like an oval tube, and that lets the crankcase lower pressure come out through there. Sometimes you can hear it when you kick them over, it hisses. But if that's full up to over that level, you're compressing everything that's in the bottom end of the engine.
Yeah.
Because the rings act the same going down as they do going up. So you're going to compress the lower crankcase, and it won't do it any good at all. I mean, the chances of actually blowing one of these up is pretty slim because it's such low compression, but it won't do it any good. So you want to just make sure you drain that oil out.
And if you if you haven't drained it of fuel, then that's something completely different. You have to clean up the carb.
I would try it first because they're so basic. The carburetors are so basic. The only thing you'll have is it'll be stale fuel in there. Yeah. So you can drain the bottom bowl out. It goes on that way. You've got a screw there. Look. If you undo that, that'll just drain the bowl out. Put your screw back in, turn your fuel back on, and then it's been filled up. Just taking all the old stale fuel out, because you kick it all day long with stale fuel, it won't go. So you need fresh fuel in it, obviously. Obviously check your tyre pressures before you ride it. Another thing to do is kick it over and just operate the clutch. Make sure your clutch isn't stuck. If you do that with the pedal and you've still got compression, which it obviously hasn't, then your clutch is stuck. So you want to just bump it into gear and just jiggle it backwards and forwards, and it'll probably free it up. They don't very often stick on these. If your crankcase is full up with oil, you don't want to put more oil in here, because it'll be overfilled. Once it's pumped, all the scavenge pumps taking all the oil out,
Yeah.
and then it'll blow oil out the cap and all sorts. So you make sure you drain that off first, put it back in there with a clean container or throw it away, and then top up your tank. As long as that crankcase has been emptied out. Like I say, if it's a brand new oil pump in there, with all the ball bearings seated down nicely and as they should be, with all the right spring tensions, then it probably won't wet some, but a lot of them do. So if you start it, I think the ideal thing, if you can, realistically, is even if you lay something up, kick it over and start it once a week. That's your ideal scenario, because it'll keep the battery topped up, it'll keep the clean fuel. Again, ideally, if you know you're going to leave it for 2 years, take all the fuel out of it. That's your ideal thing.
And how long will fuel last for before it goes stale?
Not long with the modern fuels, 2 months if you're lucky.
And any additives you can use?
Yeah, we use that sta-bil, which is quite good. Yeah, it's good stuff, that. Keep fuel fresh for 24 months, and that little bottle will treat 40 gallons, and it does ethanol fuel as well.
So would you just use that when you put it up, lay it up for the winter or something?
Yeah, or if you, like, if we're in a situation like on some of Gordon's cars or Mark's bikes, if you're trying to sell it and it's sitting around for a few months,
Yeah.
always put some of this in it. Because it doesn't, the modern ethanol fuels, it doesn't take long for them to go off at all.
And when, say you've used that additive, will that just go through the system and then clean itself out? You don't have to clean it?
No, it doesn't do anything. It just, all it does is stops it going off as such.
Okay.
Yeah, you can bung it in your fuel every time if you want to, if you know you're going to ride it once a month, or just bung a little bit in there, yeah. Oh, it's got all the measurements on it and stuff. And it lasts for 2 years once the bottle's been opened, that.
Yeah. So there's no harm using that on a monthly basis?
Not at all. Well, if you're going to ride it and start it,
you don't need it.
You don't need it. Yeah. It's literally if you're going to lay it up, or you've got something sitting around for 6 months trying to sell, or...
If you're a part-time rider, or...
Yeah. But it does work, and it's good stuff.
Oil, does that go off at all?
No. No, I mean, theoretically on one of these you should change the oil every year anyway.
Okay.
Just for peace of mind. I mean, they'll go. They're old tractors, you know, they'll just keep going. But the cleaner the oil you can keep in it, the better. If you're going to drain the oil, it comes out of there, and as in one of our previous videos, you need a big funnel because it goes everywhere.
It does.
Yeah, so just drain your system out. You can kick it through, but realistically there's no point. By the time you've filled up that tank with fresh oil, it'll all mix into where it was anyway.
And how much oil, litrage wise, would you say it would hold?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I can look it up. Probably 4, it'll be in quarts, probably 4 or 5 quarts.
Okay.
Which is 4 or 5 litres roundabout, you know. To be honest with you, you can take these oil pumps apart, like the one on Matt's engine. He said he had trouble with it, but the ball bearing was actually rusted into the bottom of the pump.
That would do it.
So it's not doing anything, you know. Because all it is like a little pressure relief valve. That's all it is. And if that's stuck and the other one's stuck open, like the oil will just drain out of the tank straight into the crankcase.
Next week on the workshop.
So he goes in. You line that up with that. You line that up with that. With a tooth out there. Okay. So what I marked there, yeah? What I marked there on your front intake cam.
Yeah.
And on your mark there on your rear exhaust cam.
Yeah.
And then your front cam then we line up that, because that you can't see what tooth that's going in, so that line there has to line up with that, then that just feeds your idler gear for the generator.
Okay.